I think we are live. I'm just gonna verify this. I just wanna check to make sure I got this going right here. Yeah, I see a live stream on X. Let's see if this is going on Rumble. Go live. Hmm, I don't see anything on Rumble yet. Is this the wrong one? Let me come back over here. Snooze hour. Coming. Let's go back here to live. Ah, there it is. Okay. Here. And locals. Is locals working? Let's see here. Refresh the page. There it is on locals. Again? Okay, cool. I'm getting audio. I'm getting everything else here. Everything seems to be okay. And we'll come back over here. All right. So tonight I am going to do a first here. I am going to do a live read of an episode that is going to be coming up on the fiction podcast, Bedtime Stories for Insomniacs. So this is actually a story by a guest author, a friend of mine, Jody J. Sperling. You may have run across him on Twitter. He's very active in the writing community. And it's a little different from the stories I normally tell, but it's a little heavy in the subject matter, but it's also got a sort of quirkiness that fits right in. And Jody and I are actually going to be selling books together in Chicago in a couple of weeks at the Printers Row Literary Fest. So if anybody's in the Chicago area, come out and see us. And in the meantime, I'm going to do this. So basically, I use this software here called Audacity. And uh, what I do is I read the narration, lay down the voice track, and then I'll go back, add music and sound effects to it. Tonight, I'm just going to do the voice track. I want to make sure that I get everything set up here correctly. And then if we have time afterwards, if there's anybody here, if there's any comments and stuff, I'll address them. Otherwise, I'll just ramble because I'm getting pretty good at that. All right. So here's the deal. I start off each episode with a little preamble, a little introduction, then I read the title, and then I'll go into the story. You'll see me pause at different times. There is a technique called duck and roll, where if I read something and I get it wrong, or I want to do it differently, or it can be better, I'll go back a little bit and then I'll play a few seconds of the previous recording and then sort of slip right back in with the change I want to make. So you'll see me do that a lot. I'm not a great first time reader, first draft reader, whatever it is. I've read the story several times already to myself, trying out different voices, trying out different cadences, making sure I know how to pronounce different words. Excuse me. Dangers of drinking carbonated beverages when you're trying to record. You might hear some burps too. Apologize for that. All right. So without further ado, I give to you In the Garden of End Times by Jody J. Sperling, as read by me, Rich Osick, for the Bedtime Stories for Insomniacs Fiction Podcast. All right. So I hope you guys at least enjoy the story, if not the process. But if you are interested in doing this, hopefully this will inspire you to give it a try yourselves. All right. Here we go. Have you ever seen a man on a busy street corner, or perhaps on the side of a highway, maybe in the crowd at a stadium, holding up a sign saying, "The end is nigh"? You might assume he's crazy. But what if he's not? Oh my goodness, something's wrong. All right, you see how my voice my levels here are really low? That is not what it's supposed to be here. Let me double check my sound settings here. More volume settings. Sometimes some application or another will change my microphone volume on me, and I'm wondering if doing this live is going to interfere with that. Well, let me see what I can do here. Oh, I'm not able to get to my sound settings. That's strange. Settings. There we go. Sound. Sound settings. Input. Yep, there we go. Turn that back up all the way there. Okay. I don't know if this is affecting my volume on the live stream. If it is, and someone is actually listening, please let me know. Just gonna turn the volume on here real quick. No, it seems okay. So let's see here. We've got that going. See, yeah, the volume is going down now. Somebody is automatically changing my volume. I am not gonna be able to do this, am I? Let me see here. How can I pin that? Um, I'll bet Rumble Studio is trying to change my volume. Let me see if there's a setting here to fix that. I may have to abandon this, guys. I'm sorry. I don't know exactly how to make that work here. Let's see here. Yep, yep. The volume keeps going down every time I talk and say something. It's like adjusting it. Let's see here. Output devices, sound mixer, volume mixer, output device, input device. Okay, that's the right input device, but it's not letting me do the right volume setting here. Okay, input. How can I change it? Let me see here. There's different settings. Input volume, two channels, DVD quality. Allow apps in Windows to use this device for audio. Yeah, that's what we want. During use may call audio application issues. This is not going to work. Um, well, that's disappointing. Well, let me do this. Let me read a little bit of it. I'll do a practice read here, and then I will record it and put you guys up here. But let me just read it for you guys so you guys can get a sense of the story and see what's going on here. Okay. So the end is nigh. You might assume he's crazy. But what if he's not? What if the end of days is just around the corner, waiting for that final sign? Something innocuous, the last piece of a hidden puzzle dropping into place. Perhaps it's as simple as an unlikely baseball. Oops, let me redo that one. So this is where we do a duck and roll here. Perhaps it's as simple as an unlikely baseball team winning the World Series. In the Garden of End Times by Jody J. Sperling. Okay, so that's the introduction. And then I come back here and I start reading. Maybe I'll share that screen with you guys instead so you can see how I'm getting through here. I hope Jody doesn't mind. I don't think he will. This is all about um, making stuff happen here. Share screen, window, and this is it here, right? Yes. Okay, so here's the story, and this is how I scroll through it as I'm reading. I've got my little mouse here with the unclicking mouse wheel and stuff so I can scroll through silently. All right, let's go. Jesus finished the beetle picking early and went to a village in rural Kent for a beer. What she really looked forward to was the day of restoration when she could drink wine again. But 2,000 years ago, incarnate in the masculine, Jesus had been the sort to dole out hasty vows, which is why he said, "For I say unto you, I will not drink of the fruit of the vine until the kingdom of God shall come. And promises are promises. The normal retinue of tagalongs were in attendance, and sitting on a high stool, Jesus was trying to ignore a rabbi's doctrinal barrage. Jesus was trying to ignore a rabbi's doctrinal barrage of questions on account of the television tuned to ESPN. The ticker at the bottom of the screen showed the Chicago Cubs had lost again. Anywhere her father plants his gardens, from the South Bronx to Macassar, Jesus hunts for Cubs scores. I'll go back and I would redo that one. Jesus hunts for Cubs scores because this is all her father has told her regarding his timeline for the restoration. You will know the time is near when the Cubs win the World Series 3 times. Which, think about it, for nearly 1900 years, that reference meant less than nothing. And so, for the past 120, give or take, the very existence of baseball has been a good indicator of final things astir. What a tease, then, is the father? Chicago put 2 series in the bag back to back in the early part of the 20th century, and Jesus was picking out fashionable summer robes for her return to And Jesus was picking out fashionable summer robes for her return to Jerusalem. But hold the rod and staff. The Cubbies hadn't gone all the way since 1908, which, yes, to Jesus is the blink of an eye, but even blinking is longer than not blinking. Contemplating the Cubs' recent loss, Jesus ordered a honey wheat lager, and while waiting for her drink, let her hair down, shaking the thick mop of brown curls. A few stools down, a young woman about the age of Jesus' body looked on. The woman said, "Excuse me, is this rabbi bothering you?" That's wrong. "Excuse me, is this rabbi bothering you?" It's not the rabbi per se, nor, though, is it the work Jesus resents. Not the weather, not even the ferociously ticklish business of incarnation, the taking on of skin and bones from the sexless, timeless paradise that is home. It's the assumptions, how all the rabbis and priests and pastors and clerics and cardinals and shazans and elders and deacons and tzaddiks who gather at her father's gardens argue their case. Seems if one's to listen to. Hang on a second, get rid of this. All right, let me try this again. All right. Seems if one's to listen to all that those religious folks go on, most anybody could do a better job of things than Jesus and her pops and the fickle Holy Spirit. Too hard to explain any of that. Jesus said yes and cast a glance at the rabbi. Oops, let me try it again. Too hard to explain any of that. Jesus said yes and cast a glare at the rabbi. But I don't need any help, if that's what you're asking. "Hi, pal," the woman said to the rabbi. "Leave the lady alone." "I said I didn't need any help," Jesus said. She fixed her gaze on the row of liquor bottles beneath the mirror that ran the length of the bar. "I'm man enough to handle my own problems." "What did you say?" "I'm man enough to handle my own problems." The woman looked Jesus up and down, lingering on her bust, and laughed. "Wonders never cease." She straightened the heavy framed glasses on her face and said, "There's nothing wrong with being a strong woman." Jesus said, "There are no strong women. There's only women and men." "Jesus fucking Christ." "That's me, the Alpha and the Omega. Not so much the middle part, though." Heavy frames narrowed her eyes and tilted her head. "Just Jesus Christ. I don't have a middle name. And if I did, it certainly wouldn't be fucking." "Okay, I'm sorry." Let me try that again. "Okay, I'm sorry. You're clearly insane. It's not worth trying to I'm gonna start this over. Okay, I'm sorry. You're clearly insane. It's not worth trying to disabuse you of your sexism, Heavy Frame said. It's sad that we live in a world where even women buy into the idea that only men can be strong. Heavy Frame I'm gonna stumble over this a bunch of times, I'm sure. Heavy Frames was turning to recapture her bar stool when Jesus said, Strength is a masculine quality. Why is that a problem? I'm pretending I didn't hear that, Heavy Frame said. She buried mouth and nose in her wine glass and drained a long draught down her throat. Let me try that again. And drained a long draught down her throat. Her hair, fixed in place with incredible amounts of gel, spoke more of the times than of her sexual orientation. Lesbians in Rome had worn flowers in their hair. Gays grew chest hair. Grew chest hair? No, they didn't. Gays drew chest-length beards and blackened their legs and arms. Let me say that one more time here. Gays grew chest-length beards and blackened their leg and arm hair with charcoal. Jesus said, Then you're making peace, which is a feminine quality. Heavy Frame swung around, her face red-stained with rage. Oh, I don't know where you come from or who taught you such bullshit, but I'll tell you that where I'm from, there are plenty of strong women who stand for their beliefs, and plenty of men who run from a fight, which I think is what you mean to say, making peace. Hmm. Which I think is what you mean when you say making peace. You have said so, Jesus said. Oh, piss off, Heavy Frame said. And it was about time to be heading off. Jesus smiled, dropped a gold coin on the bar, drank off her beer, and told the rabbi to wait up. It was good living in a woman's body. Jesus could slip into the restroom where the rabbi would not follow, lock a stall door, and ascend to paradise. They're called Japanese beetles, and Jesus lately spends the growing season plucking the little bastards from her father's rose gardens. In the dusk of a punishing summer afternoon, when storm clouds zip the heat in and lightning peals across the horizon, when it could be AD 33 for all the rage the heavens promise to unleash, and when Jesus is wearing the light duty cotton gloves, pinching oil slicked, green glowing, redly reflective, armor winged insect bodies from the finely chewed leaves of scented rose plants, when it's like that, all Jesus can think about is doing the whole robes dipped in blood, rider on a white horse, sharpened sword, come to judge the living and the dead thing. It started back in the year 2000, when Japanese beetles were still a problem only the Japanese dealt with. Jesus' father had planted his garden in Kobe. Near the end of the blooming season, Jesus was instructed to harvest as many plants as she could and arrange their shipment to Israel. There would be a great feast in Jerusalem that year, and the father wanted his rose gardens to be the main attraction. Jesus had never transplanted. Time for a drink. Okay. Jesus had never transplanted, let alone transported, grown rose plants, and she knew something was afoot, something more than the simple movement of flowers for a feast. She asked, if possible, that the cup be taken from her, but, as in prior times, the father was mute in response to the request. Second only to blood, the red damask rose pleased the father most. Careful to pluck every beetle from the plant's leaves, Jesus potted 20 dozen roses, calling the Kobe Shipping Company, and arranged for their delivery. Called the shipping, hmm, Called the Kobe Shipping Company, and arranged for delivery. The potted soil had been treated for larvae, but somehow, somewhere, one of the rose plants must have escaped notice. The following year, there were reports of a species of beetle attacking beans and roses in practically any leafing plant at all throughout the Middle East. Yasser Arafat accused the Israeli military of attempting a new biological warfare, but the accusations were muffled when it became clear that beetles harassed every land, government, and people, regardless of national affiliation and religious persuasion. Jesus' father had sent her to Dubai to tend roses that year. Even in Dubai, Catholic priests and Jewish tzaddiks found her. Oops, let me say that again. Even in Dubai, Catholic priests and Jewish tzaddiks found her. The greatest point of contention that summer regarded Jesus wearing a hijab. Jesus replied, "Would you have me crucified again?" "Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar," the priest said. But the rabbis were not satisfied. There was no beer at all to be enjoyed there, and fresh yogurt with figs only appeals for so long. One day, around dusk, when the roses were in full bloom, and the Japanese beetles had been hand plucked from every leaf on the rose bushes, Jesus suggested to the priest, an elderly man and the only one among the religious an elderly man and the only one among the religious stalkers who seemed to have a warmed let me start again. An elderly man and the only one among the religious stalkers who seemed to have warmed slightly to Jesus, that they brew mead in the cellar on the property where her father's roses grew. The priest had not brewed strong drink since he left the Trappist monastery, seeking a commission to bring relief to God's workers in the Middle East. They waited for final dusk and slipped out of the compound. In a field not far out of town, where a grove of oaks and cedars had been planted and where the government had allotted millions of gallons of water to be poured, Jesus and the priest found a wild beehive. Jesus prayed over a fallen branch nearby, and the spirit kissed its brittle bark with tongues of flame. Jesus tossed green leaves and milkweed on the fire, and the resulting smoke she used to tame the hive. The priest hiked his habit and scaled the tree after Jesus said, "You have a penis. Being a man comes more naturally to you. Be brave." Later, the priest would express surprise at what Jesus had said, and Jesus would say, "I can be a man if necessary, but it is hard work." The priest would not be comforted or enlightened by Jesus' assessment. All told, they harvested nearly a gallon of fresh honey, leaving that much and more for the bees to nourish their hive. The bees in the Middle East were the most generous bees in all the world. Perhaps they knew they were closer to God's holiness than other creatures, and His was a geographical knowledge as well. Oops, creatures. And this was a geographical knowledge as well. Acquiring distilled water happened to be more difficult than harvesting honey. It was finally by sleight that Jesus convinced a rabbi to go to market and obtain the needed water. "How can we perform our ablutions to the code of Yahweh?" Phonetically, if we have fouled water. I'm I'm asking Jody exactly how he wants me to pronounce that, so hopefully I'll get a better understanding. But that's what I understand to be so far. It's Yahweh phonetically, or is it? I don't know. Anyway, I'll figure it out, and you'll see the end product when I post it. If we have fouled water, the rabbi was wary of Jesus' request for 10 gallons, but eventually conceded. He returned with the plastic jugs, and only one gold coin remained from the 20 Jesus had sent him to town with. "Distillate is more valuable than explosives in these parts," the rabbi said. Ooh, can you hear my stomach growling? Like that. Okay, there we go. At midnight that same night, Jesus and the priest mixed the honey with water and live yeast. Before Jesus could enjoy the fruit of her labor, the Father called her home, and the next day she ascended after watering the rose garden one final time. To this day, there is likely yet to this day, to this day, there is likely yet a generous supply of deeply fermented mead hidden in the cellar of the abandoned compound where the wild roses grow and where the Japanese beetles feast freely each year. In the summer of the 16th year of the 21st century, the father planted his garden in Omaha, Nebraska. Jesus was tempted to question the location. What with the prairie expanses and the. I'm sorry, that's the dog. Normally she should be asleep by now. Go to bed. Go, go, go. All right. Jesus was tempted to question the location. What with the prairie expanse and the negligible population? Jesus had spent her share of summers in humid climates, enough to know she favored desert climes. Father said, "Were you not born in Nazareth?" It was true. Somewhere in the center of the Godhead, there was favor shown to the insignificant places. Jesus was somewhat familiar with his let me say it again. Jesus was somewhat familiar with postmodern Western culture, having spent the previous summer in the English countryside where she had met heavy frames and drank beer with a rabbi, a priest, and a Zadig. But Omaha, from all the news Jesus had read, was not only the opposite of a destination getaway, but a vestige, an outlier of the American Bible Belt community. Okay, let me say that again. But Omaha, from all the news Jesus had read, was not only the opposite of a destination getaway, but a vestige, an outlier of the American Bible Belt community. Jesus materialized in a field of corn. Why was she always dressed in white robes? It would have been no trouble for the father to spend 5 minutes online researching current fashions, but always robes. At least the cornfield appeared to be in the middle of the city. Jesus came out of the stalks onto a straight road. She followed it to an intersection, 132nd and Dodge, and spotted a glowing sign that read Hy-Vee. She patted her robes and found the standard 33 gold coins, one for every year she had suffered as a man during her first appearance. Everywhere about her, cars seemed rushed. Jesus nearly was hit by a truck as she crossed the off ramp at Dodge toward the Hy-Vee. I would do that one over probably. Jesus was nearly hit by a truck as she crossed the off ramp at Dodge toward the Hy-Vee. In the parking lot of the store, a young driver piloting a small red car blared his horn at Jesus. Near the entrance, two young girls pointed and laughed at that freak in the robes. "Father," Jesus prayed silently, "forgive them, for they know not what they do." Hy-Vee was a grocery store. Jesus asked, Jesus asked a boy in a white